Maria Santos had always been bigger than other girls her age. At 15, she stood nearly 6 feet tall and weighed close to 200 pounds. Her classmates at Roosevelt High School made sure she never forgot it. They called her names in the hallways, made elephant sounds when she walked by, and pretended to shake the ground when she climbed the stairs to her locker. The worst part wasn't the name-calling, though. It was the way teachers looked right through her when she raised her hand in class. It was the way her own family sighed when she asked for seconds at dinner. It was the way her mother bought her clothes from the men's section because nothing else would fit, then acted embarrassed about it later. Maria found refuge in books about military history and war stories. She read about soldiers who overcame impossible odds, about battles won against all expectations. Late at night, she would imagine herself in camouflage, carrying a rifle, proving everyone wrong. The stories gave her something the real world never did: hope. Her father, Roberto, had served in the army before she was born. He kept his old uniform in a closet, along with medals he never talked about. Sometimes Maria would sneak into his room and touch the fabric, wondering what it would feel like to earn respect through service instead of mockery through size. At school, the bullying got worse as the months passed. Jessica Martinez, the most popular girl in junior year, had made tormenting Maria her personal mission. She would trip Maria in the cafeteria, accidentally bump into her locker, and organize group chants about her weight during lunch breaks. The teachers either didn't notice or didn't care. One particularly bad Tuesday, Jessica and her friends cornered Maria near the gym. "Hey, Earthquake," Jessica shouted loud enough for half the school to hear. "Maybe you should try the military diet. You know, the one where they actually make you exercise instead of just eating everything in sight." The comment hit differently than usual. Maria had been reading about female soldiers, women who had proven themselves in combat despite facing discrimination. Something inside her shifted that day. Instead of looking down at her shoes like always, she met Jessica's eyes directly. "Maybe I will," Maria said quietly. The girls laughed, thinking it was another weak comeback. But Maria wasn't joking. That evening, she researched military recruitment requirements. She learned about basic training, about the physical and mental challenges that transformed ordinary people into soldiers. Most importantly, she learned that the military judged people by their actions, not their appearance. Her parents were shocked when she announced her intention to enlist after graduation. Her mother, Carmen, immediately started crying. "Mija, the military is no place for girls, especially girls like you. You'll get hurt. You're not built for that kind of life." Her father was more supportive but equally concerned. "Maria, military service is harder than you think. The physical demands alone. Have you really thought this through?" But Maria had thought it through. Every sleepless night, every humiliating day at school, every moment of self-doubt had led her to this decision. She wanted to prove that strength came in different forms, that courage mattered more than size, and that she was capable of more than anyone imagined. She started preparing immediately. Every morning before school, she ran around the neighborhood. At first, she could barely make it 2 blocks without stopping to catch her breath. Neighbors would stare from their windows, some laughing, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Maria ignored them all and kept running. In the evenings, she did push-ups and sit-ups in her bedroom. She researched military fitness standards and created training schedules. She changed her diet, cutting out junk food and focusing on protein and vegetables. Her family thought it was just another phase, like when she tried to learn guitar or wanted to become a vegetarian. But Maria was more determined than she had ever been about anything. She had found her purpose, her path to proving everyone wrong. The military would be her chance to show the world that Maria Santos was more than her size, more than the jokes and the stares and the cruel comments. At school, word spread about her military plans. The reaction was exactly what she expected. More laughter, more jokes, more predictions of failure. Jessica Martinez practically threw a party when she heard the news. "Can you imagine Maria Santos in boot camp?" Jessica announced to anyone who would listen. "She'll probably quit after the first day. They'll need a crane to get her through the obstacle course." The comments stung, but they also fueled Maria's determination. Every cruel joke became motivation to train harder. Every doubting look from a teacher became reason to prove them wrong. Every family member who suggested she choose a more realistic path became evidence that she needed to succeed. Spring semester of her senior year arrived faster than expected. Maria had been training consistently for months. She had lost some weight, gained muscle, and developed endurance she never knew she possessed. More importantly, she had gained something even more valuable: unshakable confidence in her decision. College acceptance letters came and went without Maria opening them. Her guidance counselor tried repeatedly to schedule meetings about her future plans. Her mother alternated between pleading with her to reconsider and crying about her only daughter going to war. Through it all, Maria remained focused. She had contacted military recruiters, learned about different career paths within the Army, and specifically requested information about specialized roles that would challenge her physically and mentally. She wasn't interested in easy assignments or desk jobs. She wanted to prove herself in the most demanding environments possible. The day finally came when she had to sign her enlistment papers. Standing in the recruiter's office, pen in hand, Maria thought about everyone who had doubted her. She thought about Jessica Martinez and her cruel friends. She thought about teachers who had overlooked her potential. She thought about family members who had suggested she aim lower. Most of all, she thought about the girl who used to hide in bathroom stalls to avoid bullies, who ate lunch alone every day, who went to bed crying more nights than not. That girl deserved better. That girl deserved to see what she was truly capable of achieving. Maria signed her name with steady hands, officially beginning a journey that would take her further than anyone had ever imagined possible. She had no idea that within 2 years, she would be carrying one of the most powerful sniper rifles in the world across desert terrain, earning respect from hardened soldiers who had initially questioned her presence among them. The transformation was about to begin. The bus to Fort Leonard Wood arrived at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday in June. Maria had barely slept the night before, partly from excitement and partly from her mother's endless tears. Carmen had spent the entire evening cooking Maria's favorite foods, as if this might be her last chance to do so. "Promise me you'll come home if it gets too hard," her mother whispered at the bus station. "There's no shame in admitting something isn't right for you." Maria hugged her parents goodbye, grabbed her single duffel bag, and climbed onto the bus with 17 other new recruits. Most of them were men, all of them younger and smaller than her. She could already feel their curious stares and hear their whispered comments about the big girl who thought she could be a soldier. The ride to Missouri took 8 hours. Maria spent most of it staring out the window, watching familiar landscapes disappear and wondering what lay ahead. The other recruits gradually started talking among themselves, forming small groups and sharing stories about what had brought them to military service. Nobody tried to include Maria in their conversations. When they arrived at Fort Leonard Wood, everything happened fast. Drill sergeants were screaming before the bus had even stopped completely. New recruits were ordered off the bus into formation and through a series of rapid-fire instructions that made Maria's head spin. She had read about basic training, but experiencing it was completely different. Sergeant First Class Williams took one look at Maria and shook his head. He was a compact man with iron-gray hair and muscles that looked carved from stone. His voice could cut through steel when he shouted, which was most of the time. "Santos," he barked during their first formation. "You think this is summer camp? You think we're here to coddle you and make you feel special? This is the United States Army, not a weight loss program." The other recruits tried not to laugh, but Maria could see them struggling. She stood straighter and looked directly ahead, exactly as instructed. She had expected this reaction and prepared herself mentally for worse treatment than the others would receive. The first week was brutal for everyone, but especially for Maria. Physical training started before dawn with runs that seemed designed to break weak spirits. While the other recruits struggled with the distance and pace, Maria struggled with both those things plus the extra weight she carried and the constant attention her efforts attracted. "Move it, Santos," Sergeant Williams would shout when she fell behind the group. "Your enemies won't wait for you to catch your breath. They won't care about your feelings or your excuses." After runs came calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, and exercises Maria had never heard of. Her body ached constantly. Her muscles screamed. Her lungs burned. But she never quit. While other recruits occasionally had to stop and rest, Maria pushed through every exercise even when her form suffered, and sweat poured down her face. The other recruits started to notice. At first, they had expected her to wash out within days. Military training had broken tougher-looking people than Maria Santos. But she kept showing up, kept trying, kept improving slowly but steadily. Tommy Rodriguez from El Paso was the first to say something positive. After a particularly difficult obstacle course session where Maria had struggled but completed every challenge, he approached her during their brief rest period. "You've got heart," he said simply. "I thought you'd be gone by now, but you're tougher than you look." The comment meant more to Maria than Tommy could have known. For the first time since arriving, someone had acknowledged her effort rather than focusing on her limitations. It gave her strength to push through the remaining weeks of basic training. Gradually, Maria's body began to change. The constant physical activity and military diet stripped away excess weight while building functional strength. She still looked different from the other soldiers, but she was becoming genuinely fit in ways that mattered for military service. More importantly, her confidence grew with every challenge she overcame. Weapons training was where Maria discovered her true calling. The first time she held an M16 rifle, something clicked. The weight felt natural in her hands. The mechanics made sense. Most surprisingly, she could shoot accurately from the very beginning. Sergeant Williams noticed immediately. "Santos, where did you learn to shoot?" "I didn't, Sergeant," Maria replied honestly. "This is my first time holding a real rifle." "Well, you're a natural. Don't let it go to your head, but you just outshot half the men in this company." Word spread quickly through the training company about Maria's shooting ability. Soldiers who had barely acknowledged her existence suddenly wanted to know her secret. The same recruits who had mocked her size were now asking for marksmanship tips. Maria excelled in other areas too. She was intelligent, detail-oriented, and surprisingly good at tactics and strategy. During field exercises, she often identified solutions that others missed. Her size, which had seemed like such a disadvantage, actually provided certain benefits in combat situations. As graduation from basic training approached, Maria had transformed completely. She had lost 40 pounds of fat and gained 20 pounds of muscle. Her posture was straighter, her voice was stronger, and her eyes held a confidence that had never been there before. Most importantly, she had proven to herself and others that she belonged in the military. The night before graduation, Sergeant Williams approached her during final equipment inspection. He had been hard on her throughout training, sometimes brutally so, but Maria had come to respect him enormously. "Santos, I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "When you first arrived, I thought you were here for the wrong reasons. I figured you'd wash out like so many others who think military service is some kind of therapy program. I was wrong." Maria stood at attention, unsure how to respond. "You've got what it takes," he continued. "More than that, you've got something special. I'm recommending you for advanced individual training in marksmanship. If you're interested, there are opportunities for specialized roles that would put your skills to better use than regular infantry." The recommendation changed everything. Instead of being assigned to a standard unit after basic training, Maria would have the chance to compete for elite positions that few soldiers ever achieved. It was an opportunity she had never dared to imagine. Graduation day arrived with fanfare and family visits. Maria's parents flew in from California, hardly recognizing their transformed daughter. Carmen cried again, but this time from pride rather than worry. Roberto stood straighter himself, clearly amazed by what his daughter had accomplished. "I'm proud of you, mija," he said during their brief visit. "You proved everyone wrong, including me." That evening, as Maria packed her belongings for the next phase of training, she thought about Jessica Martinez and the other bullies from high school. She wondered if they would even recognize her now. More importantly, she realized she no longer cared what they thought. Their opinions had once controlled her life, but now they seemed small and unimportant. Maria Santos had found her place in the world, and it was exactly where no one had expected her to succeed. Fort Benning, Georgia felt like a different world compared to basic training. Maria arrived there 6 weeks after graduation, ready to begin advanced individual training for military occupational specialty, 11B, infantry. But Sergeant Williams had pulled some strings, and she also had orders to report for evaluation as a potential sniper candidate. The sniper program was legendary in the Army. Only the best marksmen were even allowed to try out. And the failure rate was over 70%. Most candidates were seasoned soldiers with years of experience. Maria was barely 20 years old and had been in the Army for less than 4 months. Master Sergeant Jennifer Hayes ran the sniper selection program. She was a compact woman in her 40s with steel gray eyes and a reputation for being harder on female candidates than male ones. She had fought for her position in a male-dominated field and expected other women to prove themselves just as thoroughly. "Santos," she said during Maria's first day of evaluation. "I've read your file. Impressive marksmanship scores from basic, but that was playing with toys compared to what we do here. You think you can handle a Barrett M82? That rifle weighs 30 pounds. It fires 50 caliber rounds that can punch through engine blocks. You sure you want to be here?" Maria had researched the Barrett extensively after learning about her sniper evaluation. The M82 was one of the most powerful rifles in the world, designed for taking out vehicles and equipment at extreme ranges. It was also notorious for its punishing recoil and the physical demands it placed on operators. "Yes, Master Sergeant," Maria replied without hesitation. The first week of sniper selection was designed to weed out weak candidates quickly. The physical requirements were brutal even by military standards. Candidates had to carry full equipment loads for miles through difficult terrain, often while crawling or moving in uncomfortable positions for hours at a time. Maria's size, which had been a source of shame throughout her childhood, suddenly became an advantage. While smaller candidates struggled with the weight of their equipment, she handled heavy loads with relative ease. Her large frame provided stability when shooting from prone positions. Most importantly, years of carrying extra weight had built functional strength that translated perfectly to military tasks. The academic portion was equally challenging. Sniper candidates had to master ballistics, weather effects, range estimation, and dozens of other technical subjects. Maria's love of reading and natural intelligence served her well. She studied late into the night, memorizing trajectory tables and wind calculations while other candidates struggled with the math. But the real test came during live-fire exercises. The first time Maria shouldered a Barrett M82, she understood why so many candidates failed. The rifle was massive, unwieldy, and kicked like an angry mule when fired. The sound alone was enough to intimidate most people. "Take your time, Santos," Master Sergeant Hayes instructed. "This isn't about speed. It's about precision. That target is 800 meters away. In combat, you might only get one shot." Maria settled into her firing position, adjusting her grip and checking her sight picture. The target looked impossibly small through the scope. She controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle thundered like cannon fire. The recoil drove into her shoulder with tremendous force, but she had braced properly and rode it without losing her sight picture. Downrange, the target showed a perfect center hit. "Outstanding," Master Sergeant Hayes said, genuine surprise in her voice. Again. Shot after shot, Maria delivered accurate fire at increasingly difficult ranges. By the end of the first live fire session, she had outperformed candidates with much more experience. Word began spreading through the sniper community about the big rookie who could shoot like a veteran. The psychological pressure was enormous. Other candidates started watching Maria's every move, looking for signs of weakness or failure. Some were supportive, impressed by her abilities and work ethic. Others resented her success, especially when she outperformed soldiers who had been in the Army much longer. Private First Class Jake Morrison was one of the resentful ones. He had been a marksman in his previous unit and expected to breeze through sniper training. When Maria consistently outshot him during qualifications, his attitude became hostile. "She's just lucky," he told other candidates during meal breaks. "Wait until we get to the field exercise. See how she handles real pressure when people are depending on her." Maria ignored the comments and focused on training. She had dealt with hostile attitudes her entire life and wasn't about to let Jake Morrison derail her progress. If anything, his doubts motivated her to work harder and prove herself more thoroughly. The field training exercise was the culmination of sniper selection. Candidates would spend 5 days in simulated combat conditions, executing missions that tested every skill they had learned. Most importantly, they would work with infantry units who depended on accurate sniper support to complete their objectives. Maria was paired with Staff Sergeant Mike Chen, an experienced infantryman who had worked with snipers before. He was professional but clearly skeptical about working with such an inexperienced soldier, especially one who looked so different from the typical sniper. "Listen, Santos," he said during their mission briefing, "I've got soldiers counting on accurate fire support. If you're not ready for this, speak up now. No shame in waiting for more training." "I'm ready, Staff Sergeant," Maria replied confidently. "I won't let you down." Their first mission required Maria to provide overwatch for Chen's squad while they cleared a series of buildings. She positioned herself 800 meters away with a clear view of the objective area. The Barrett M82 was perfectly zeroed and ready for action. The exercise began at dawn. Chen's squad moved toward the target buildings while Maria scanned for threats through her scope. The scenario called for enemy snipers to be hidden in various locations. Waiting to engage the advancing infantry, Maria spotted the first threat before anyone else, a muzzle flash from a window on the second floor of the main building. She quickly estimated range, adjusted for wind, and fired a single round. The target went down immediately. "Tango down," she reported calmly over the radio. "Second floor center window." Throughout the 5-day exercise, Maria performed flawlessly. She identified threats, delivered accurate fire on demand, and provided crucial intelligence to infantry units. Most importantly, she remained calm under pressure and made smart tactical decisions even in chaotic situations. By the final day, Staff Sergeant Chen had become one of her biggest supporters. "I've worked with a lot of snipers," he told Master Sergeant Hayes during the after-action review. "Santos is special. She sees things others miss, shoots better than people with years more experience, and never panics. I'd trust her to watch my back anywhere." The evaluation results were announced on a Friday afternoon. Of the original 36 candidates who started sniper selection, only 11 would graduate. Maria Santos was not only among them. She had scored first in marksmanship, second in academics, and first overall in the combined evaluation. Master Sergeant Hayes pulled her aside after the announcement. "Congratulations, Santos. You earned this, but I need to warn you about what comes next. You'll be assigned to an infantry unit where you'll be the only female sniper most of these soldiers have ever worked with. Some will test you. Others will doubt you until you prove yourself in real situations. Are you ready for that challenge?" Maria thought about all the challenges she had already faced. The bullying in high school, the doubts from her family, the skepticism during basic training, and the pressure of sniper selection. Each experience had made her stronger and more determined. "I've been getting ready for that challenge my whole life, Master Sergeant." 3 weeks later, Private First Class Maria Santos reported to Fort Carson, Colorado, for assignment to the 10th Mountain Division. In her bag was a certificate marking her successful completion of sniper training and authorization to carry the Barrett M82 rifle system. She had no idea that within 6 months, she would be deploying to Afghanistan, where her skills would be tested in ways that no training could fully prepare her for. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Maria was in the middle of routine training exercises at Fort Carson when her squad leader, Staff Sergeant David Park, pulled her aside with orders that would change everything. "Santos, you're going to Afghanistan. 10th Mountain is deploying next month to support operations in Kandahar province. Your unit will be working with Special Operations Forces on high-priority missions. This is the real thing." Maria felt her stomach flip, but her voice remained steady. "When do we leave, Staff Sergeant?" 4 weeks. "You'll spend the next 3 weeks in pre-deployment training? Then your wheels up to Kabul. Hope you're ready for this, because there's no practice rounds where you're going." The pre-deployment training was intense beyond anything Maria had experienced. The Army wanted to prepare soldiers for the realities of combat in Afghanistan, the extreme heat, the difficult terrain, the tactics used by enemy fighters, and the pressure of making life or death decisions in seconds. Maria excelled during the training, but she could feel the weight of expectations from everyone around her. She was still the only female sniper in her unit, still the soldier who looked different from everyone else, still carrying the burden of proving that she belonged in combat roles. Captain James Rodriguez commanded the company Maria would be joining in Afghanistan. He was a veteran of 2 previous deployments and had specific ideas about how female soldiers should be used in combat zones. "Santos," he said during a private meeting 2 days before deployment, "I've read your file. Impressive training scores, but Afghanistan is different from Fort Benning. I need to know you can handle the physical demands, the psychological pressure, and the fact that enemy fighters will specifically target female soldiers. Are you absolutely certain you're ready for this?" Maria had heard variations of this question countless times over the past year. Her answer never changed. "Sir, I trained for this. I qualified for this. I'm ready to do my job and support the mission, whatever that requires." The flight to Afghanistan took 26 hours with stops in Germany and Kuwait. Maria spent most of the journey thinking about her family, her high school classmates, and the long path that had brought her to this moment. In her cargo bag was the Barrett M82 that had become her signature weapon, along with enough ammunition to make a serious impact on any mission. Kandahar airfield was like nothing Maria had ever seen. The base sprawled across miles of desert, filled with aircraft, vehicles, and soldiers from dozens of different countries. The heat was oppressive even in early April, and dust got into everything within minutes of arrival. Maria's unit was assigned to Forward Operating Base Chapman, a smaller outpost about 40 miles north of Kandahar. The base was home to roughly 300 soldiers whose job was to patrol a region known for heavy Taliban activity. It was dangerous work that required constant vigilance and split-second decision-making. Specialist Tony Vasquez had been deployed to Afghanistan twice before and took it upon himself to educate new arrivals about survival in combat zones. He approached Maria during her second day at the base, speaking quietly so others wouldn't hear. "Listen, Santos, I've got nothing against female soldiers, but this place is different. Enemy fighters know we have women on the base, and they'll do anything to capture one. They use female prisoners for propaganda purposes, torture them worse than men, and broadcast the videos online. You need to be extra careful out there." The warning was sobering, but Maria had already considered these risks during training. She knew the dangers were real and that enemy fighters might target her specifically because of her gender. But she also knew that hiding on the base wouldn't help anyone or accomplish the mission. Her first patrol came 5 days after arriving. The mission was relatively simple: escort a convoy of supply trucks through an area where IEDs had been planted frequently. Maria's job was to provide overwatch from high ground while the convoy passed through the most dangerous sections of road. The Barrett M82 felt familiar and reassuring in her hands as she took position on a ridge overlooking the supply route. Through her scope, she could see for miles across the desert landscape. The convoy was still 20 minutes away, which gave her time to study the area for any signs of enemy activity. At 1400 hours, she spotted movement in a compound about 1,200 meters away. 2 men were setting up what looked like a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, aiming it toward the road where the convoy would pass. "Overwatch to base," Maria called over her radio. "I have 2 military-age males with possible RPG at coordinates 287645. Request permission to engage." "Base to Overwatch," came the reply from Captain Rodriguez. "Are you certain of hostile intent? We need positive identification before weapons free." Maria watched through her scope as one of the men finished assembling the weapon, while the other scanned the road with binoculars. There was no doubt about their intentions. Positive identification confirmed. "Weapons are trained on convoy route. Permission to engage. Weapons free, Overwatch. Take the shot." Maria adjusted her scope for the distance and wind conditions. At 1,200 meters, the Barrett's .50 caliber round would take nearly 2 seconds to reach the target. She had to lead the target slightly and account for the man's movement as he positioned the RPG. She controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle thundered across the desert. Through her scope, she saw the first target drop immediately. The second man spun around in confusion, trying to locate the source of the shot. Maria had already chambered another round. The second shot was easier since the target was now stationary and looking in her direction. "Another perfect hit. 2 tangos down," she reported calmly. "Area is clear for convoy passage." The convoy passed through safely 15 minutes later. As they drove past Maria's position, several soldiers gave her thumbs-up signals through their vehicle windows. Word had already spread over the radio about the successful engagement. That evening, Captain Rodriguez approached her during chow time. His attitude had changed noticeably since her arrival at the base. "Outstanding work today, Santos. Clean shots at long range under pressure. That's exactly the kind of support we need from our sniper element." The successful mission established Maria's credibility with her unit, but it also marked the beginning of increasingly dangerous assignments. Enemy fighters in the region learned that American forces had an effective sniper supporting their operations, and they adapted their tactics accordingly. Over the following weeks, Maria participated in dozens of combat operations. She provided overwatch for infantry patrols, eliminated high-value targets, and gathered intelligence from concealed positions. Each mission built her experience and confidence while proving that she could perform under the most demanding combat conditions. The physical demands were enormous. Afghanistan's mountainous terrain required soldiers to carry heavy equipment for miles at high altitude. Maria often had to hike for hours to reach firing positions, then remain motionless for extended periods while scanning for targets. The Barrett M82 and its ammunition added significant weight to her load, but she never complained or asked for assistance. Her fellow soldiers began to see her differently. Instead of the rookie female sniper who might need extra protection, she became the marksman they wanted watching their backs during dangerous missions. She had earned their respect through performance rather than trying to fit in or prove herself with words. But the real test was still coming. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy forces were planning a major attack on their forward operating base. When it came, Maria would need every skill she had developed to help defend her fellow soldiers and prove once and for all that she belonged in the most elite units of the United States Army. The attack would come sooner than anyone expected, and it would push Maria to limits she never knew she possessed. The attack began at 0347 hours on a moonless Thursday morning in June. Maria was pulled from deep sleep by the distinctive whistle of incoming mortars followed by explosions that shook the entire forward operating base. Emergency sirens wailed as soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. All personnel to defensive positions. Captain Rodriguez's voice boomed over the base loudspeaker. This is not a drill. We are under attack. Maria grabbed her equipment and sprinted toward her assigned fighting position on the base perimeter. The Barrett M82 felt heavier than usual as adrenaline surged through her system. Around her, soldiers were running in all directions, taking cover behind concrete barriers and returning fire toward muzzle flashes in the surrounding hills. Enemy forces had positioned themselves in the mountains overlooking the base, using the high ground to rain down accurate fire on American positions. Mortars continued to fall randomly throughout the compound, creating chaos and preventing effective counterattacks. Santos, Staff Sergeant Park shouted over the noise of battle. We need you on the North Tower. Enemy snipers are picking off anyone who shows themselves. Take them out! The North Tower was a concrete observation post that provided excellent visibility, but offered little protection from enemy fire. 2 soldiers had already been wounded trying to use it as a firing position. Maria understood why she was being sent there. She was the only sniper accurate enough to engage enemy marksmen at extreme range. The climb to the tower took her through open ground that was being swept by enemy machine gun fire. Bullets cracked through the air around her as she sprinted from cover to cover, carrying the 30-pound Barrett and additional ammunition. Her body armor and helmet added more weight, but she moved with surprising speed for someone her size. From the tower, Maria could see the full scope of the attack. Enemy fighters had taken positions throughout the surrounding mountains, creating overlapping fields of fire that covered every approach to the base. Green tracer rounds streaked down from the hills while red American tracers answered back. The battle was intense and getting worse. Through her scope, Maria began identifying enemy positions. Her first target was a machine gun team about 800 meters away. They had set up behind rocks and were systematically targeting American soldiers who tried to man the perimeter defenses. The shot was difficult because of the angle and the fact that only small portions of the enemy fighters were visible behind their cover. Maria waited patiently until the machine gunner shifted position to reload. When his head and shoulders appeared above the rocks, she fired. The Barrett's .50 caliber round struck with devastating effect. The enemy machine gun fell silent immediately. Maria quickly shifted her aim to identify the next threat. Outstanding shot, Santos, came a voice over her radio. That machine gun was pinning down half of 2nd Platoon, but there was no time to celebrate. Enemy mortars were still falling throughout the base, and Maria could see more fighters moving into position on the ridgelines. The attack was much larger than intelligence reports had predicted. American forces were outnumbered and in serious danger of being overrun. Maria's next target was an enemy sniper, who had taken position in a ruined building about 1,200 meters away. She had seen his muzzle flash during previous shots and knew he was targeting American soldiers on the eastern perimeter. This was the most challenging shot of her career. Extreme range, difficult angle, and an opponent who was skilled enough to remain mostly concealed. She studied the building through her scope, looking for any movement or reflection that might reveal the enemy sniper's exact location. After several minutes of patient observation, she caught a brief glimpse of sunlight reflecting off his scope lens. The target was barely visible, just a shadow in a window opening. Maria made minute adjustments to her scope to account for the distance and the slight crosswind. She controlled her breathing and waited for her heartbeat to steady. This shot had to be perfect. The Barrett thundered again. Through her scope, Maria saw the enemy sniper's rifle tumble out of the window opening. "Direct hit. Sniper down," she reported. Building at 12 o'clock, 1,200 meters, the battle continued for another 2 hours. Maria engaged target after target, systematically eliminating enemy fighters who threatened American positions. Her accuracy was devastating to enemy morale. They had expected to use superior numbers and positioning to overwhelm the base. But one American sniper was neutralizing their key personnel. As dawn approached, the enemy attack began to falter. Their leaders had been eliminated, their heavy weapons silenced, and their fighters were taking casualties faster than they could inflict them. By 0600 hours, the remaining enemy forces were retreating back into the mountains. Maria had fired 37 rounds during the battle. Intelligence reports later confirmed 29 enemy fighters killed or wounded by sniper fire. She had single-handedly turned the tide of the engagement and saved countless American lives. Captain Rodriguez found her in the tower 2 hours after the battle ended. She was still at her position, scanning the hills for any sign of remaining threats. The Barrett was hot from repeated firing, and Maria's uniform was soaked with sweat, but she remained alert and ready. "Santos, you can stand down now," the captain said quietly. "The area is secure." Maria slowly lowered her rifle and turned to face him. Her eyes were still sharp with adrenaline, but she showed no signs of the stress that typically followed intense combat. "Outstanding work today, Specialist," Captain Rodriguez continued. "I've been in combat for 8 years and I've never seen shooting like that. You saved lives today, probably saved this entire base." Word of Maria's performance spread quickly throughout the military community in Afghanistan. Within days, requests were coming in from special operations units who wanted her assigned to their missions. Her reputation as a sniper had grown beyond her unit to the highest levels of military command. Colonel Patricia Hayes, commanding officer of the 10th Mountain Division's forward elements, flew to Fob Chapman specifically to meet with Maria. The colonel was a career infantry officer who had fought her way up through ranks that were traditionally closed to women. "Specialist Santo," she said during a private meeting, "your performance during the attack has been noted at the highest levels. I have a proposition for you. Delta Force is requesting sniper support for a high-priority mission. It would be dangerous, classified, and unlike anything you've done before. Are you interested?" Maria didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am. When do I leave?" The mission would require her to work with the most elite soldiers in the American military on an operation that could not afford any mistakes. More importantly, it would take her deeper into enemy territory than any female soldier had gone before, carrying the Barrett M82 that had become her signature weapon. 3 days later, Maria found herself at a classified location, meeting with operators whose faces she was not allowed to see, and whose names she would never learn. They briefed her on a mission to eliminate a high-value target who was coordinating attacks against American forces throughout the region. The target was hiding in a compound deep in Taliban-controlled territory. Getting there would require a 15-mile march through some of the most dangerous terrain in Afghanistan. The shot, when it came, would need to be perfect. There would be no second chances and no margin for error. As Maria prepared her equipment for the mission, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the overweight teenager who had been mocked in high school hallways to an elite military sniper, trusted with the most sensitive operations. In the United States Army, the girl who had once hidden from bullies was now preparing to march through hostile territory with a 30-pound rifle, ready to take on challenges that few soldiers would ever face. She had proven everyone wrong, including herself, about what was possible when determination met opportunity. The mission would launch at midnight. Maria Santos would disappear into the Afghan mountains, carrying her Barrett M82 in the hopes of everyone who had ever doubted that courage came in different packages. The final test of her transformation was about to begin. The 15-mile march began at midnight under a starless sky. Maria moved through the Afghan mountains with 8 Delta Force operators whose faces were covered by night vision equipment and tactical masks. They had trained together for only 2 days. But the elite soldiers had quickly accepted her presence after reviewing her combat record. Master Sergeant Collins, the team leader, had been skeptical about bringing a female sniper on such a sensitive mission, but after watching Maria's performance during pre-mission exercises, his doubts had evaporated. "Santos shoots better than anyone I've worked with," he told his men during final preparations. "She's proven herself in combat, and this mission requires the best marksman we can get. Gender doesn't matter when bullets are flying." The terrain was brutal even by Afghan standards. Steep mountain paths, loose rock that could cause fatal falls, and temperatures that dropped below freezing despite the summer season. Maria carried the Barrett M82 plus a full combat load of ammunition, medical supplies, and survival equipment. The total weight exceeded 60 pounds, but she kept pace with operators who were known throughout the military for their physical conditioning. 6 hours into the march, they reached a checkpoint where intelligence reports indicated enemy patrols were active. The team took cover behind a ridge while Collins used thermal imaging equipment to scan for hostile forces. "Two guards at 11 o'clock, about 400 meters, he whispered. "They're positioned to observe the trail we need to use. Santos, can you take them quietly?" Maria studied the targets through her scope. Both enemy fighters were alert and well-positioned, but they were focused on watching the main trail rather than scanning for threats from above. She had clear shots at both targets, confirmed. "I can engage both targets with minimal noise signature." The Barrett M82 was designed for long-range precision rather than stealth operations. But Maria had learned techniques for reducing the sound and muzzle flash that might alert other enemy forces in the area. She used a suppressor and special ammunition that would minimize the acoustic signature while maintaining accuracy. The first shot dropped the target immediately. Maria quickly chambered another round and engaged the second guard before he could react to his partner's collapse. Both enemies were neutralized without alerting nearby patrols. "Outstanding work," Collins said quietly. "Trail is clear. Let's move." They continued through the mountains for another 6 hours, avoiding enemy patrols and navigating terrain that challenged even the most experienced soldiers. Maria's physical conditioning, built through years of demanding training, allowed her to maintain the grueling pace while carrying her heavy weapon system. At 1200 hours, they reached the observation point overlooking their target compound. The building was a fortified structure built into a mountainside, surrounded by defensive positions and guard towers. Intelligence reports indicated that Hakim Rashid, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against American forces, was meeting with other enemy leaders inside the compound. Maria studied the target area through her scope, memorizing the layout and identifying potential firing positions. The shot would be challenging, over 1,400 meters through mountain air with variable wind conditions. More importantly, the target would appear for only seconds at a time, requiring perfect timing and accuracy. "Target building is at 1,400 meters, Maria reported to Collins. "I have a clear field of fire from this position, but the shot window will be very limited. When the target appears, I'll have maybe 3 seconds before he's back under cover." Collins checked his watch and radio equipment. "Intelligence says Rashid usually appears on the second-floor balcony at 1500 hours for afternoon prayers. You'll have one chance to take the shot. If you miss, the entire compound will go on alert and the mission fails." The team settled into position and began the waiting period that was crucial to all sniper operations. Maria prepared her rifle meticulously, checking every system and making precise adjustments for the distance and environmental conditions. The Barrett was perfectly zeroed and ready for the most important shot of her military career. At 14:55 hours, movement appeared on the target balcony. Maria could see several figures through her scope, but positive identification was crucial. The wrong target would compromise the entire operation and potentially harm innocent civilians. "I have multiple military-age males on the balcony," she reported quietly, still waiting for positive identification of primary target. At exactly 1500 hours, a tall man with a distinctive beard appeared on the balcony. Maria compared his features with photographs she had studied during mission planning. The identification was positive. This was Hakim Rashid, the high-value target they had traveled 15 miles through hostile territory to eliminate. "Positive identification confirmed," Maria whispered. "I have the target." Collins gave final clearance. "You are weapons-free. Take the shot." Maria controlled her breathing and found her natural point of aim. The target was clearly visible through her scope, standing in a position that offered a clear shot. Wind conditions were stable. Range was confirmed at 1,400 meters. Everything was perfect. She squeezed the trigger smoothly, following through with her shooting fundamentals exactly as she had been trained. The Barrett thundered across the mountains, sending a .50 caliber round downrange at over 2,000 feet per second. Through her scope, Maria watched the target collapse immediately. The shot had been perfect. Center mass hit that eliminated the threat instantly. Around the compound, enemy fighters scrambled for cover, but they had no idea where the shot had come from. Target down, Maria reported calmly. Mission accomplished. The team immediately began their extraction, moving quickly away from the area before enemy forces could organize a search. The 15-mile march back to the extraction point took 8 hours, but they encountered no enemy resistance. Word of Rashid's elimination had created confusion and fear among Taliban fighters throughout the region. 3 days later, Maria was back at FOB Chapman, debriefing with intelligence officers about the mission's success. The elimination of Hakim Rashid had disrupted enemy operations across 3 provinces and saved countless American and Afghan lives. Colonel Hayes arrived at the base personally to commend Maria for her performance. Along with the colonel came news that would change Maria's life once again. Specialist Santos, the colonel announced during a formal ceremony, "Your actions during recent combat operations have been exemplary. Your marksmanship, professionalism, and courage under fire represent the highest traditions of the United States Army. You are hereby promoted to the rank of sergeant and awarded the Bronze Star Medal for valor in combat." The ceremony was attended by every soldier on the base. As Maria stood at attention while the medal was pinned to her uniform, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From the overweight teenager who had been mocked and dismissed to a decorated combat veteran who had earned the respect of the most elite soldiers in the military. 6 months later, Maria returned home to California on leave. Her transformation was complete, physically, mentally, and emotionally. She had proven that strength came in many forms, that courage was more important than appearance, and that determination could overcome any obstacle. When she walked through the airport in San Diego, wearing her dress uniform and carrying the Bronze Star citation, nobody stared at her size anymore. Instead, they saw a United States Army sergeant who had served her country with distinction in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The girl who had once hidden from bullies had become a warrior who marched through hostile mountains with a Barrett M82 on her shoulder, earning respect through actions rather than words. Maria Santos had proven everyone wrong, most importantly herself, about what was possible when someone refused to accept limitations imposed by others. Her story would inspire countless other young people who felt different, overlooked, or underestimated. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the best soldiers are the ones nobody thought would succeed.